Hi and welcome back to Glassbox writing automated cucumber tests. This is the first video in a series of videos in which we will discover the mechanics to build our very own cucumber testing framework from scratch. We will talk about writing features, data tables, hooks, suits, and so on. So let's begin. So today we are going to have a look at first setting up our brand new cucumber framework completely from scratch. So that means today we'll look at, first of all, getting all the jars we need. We will look at writing some kind of hierarchical directory in which we will place all the necessary files to run a test, and we will write a very basic feature file as proof of concept that our framework is working. So yeah, let's get started. Right, so the first thing we're going to need are all the jars that we will need to insert into our frameworks as external jars, so that when we begin writing feature files and class files, all the API commands are recognized. So to do that, we need to manually, for the moment, go and download all the jars. And the jars we'll need are all here. So these are all the jars that we will now go off and download, and I'll show you exactly where to go and download them. So maybe really quickly, just take a note of these jars for the moment, and once you've kind of got the note, maybe pause the video if you like, and we will go off and download the jars. So first of all, we're going to go and download all the cucumber jars, and the cucumber jars we will need are all of these jars. So all the jars I've highlighted now are the ones we will need to download as part of cucumber, and we get them from here, effectively from Maven. In fact, we get all our jars from Maven, and the jars we need are all here. So if I just picked one at random, so the first one, cucumber core, I'm sure you guys are whiz automators, so I'm sure you won't need actual guidance on where to get it, but just on the off chance, if I want to just say, let's just say the cucumber core jar, I'd find cucumber core, which is here, click on that, and then I'd get the version I want. So the version I'm using is 1.1.5. so if I wanted the 1.1.5, I just go in here and then I download the jar from here, and you effectively repeat the steps until you have all the cucumber jars. It's pretty straightforward. Why do we need all of these cucumber jars? Well, I won't go into too much detail, but these are jars that are needed in order for our feature file to be recognized and to be able to communicate with our class files. The next thing we'll need is JUnit. So again, we get JUnit again from Maven, and the version I'm using at the moment is 4.11. Again, just come here and download it. All the links are below in the description. We will also need Hamcrest from here, again from Maven, pretty straightforward. And the last jar we will need is the Selenium server standalone jar. So really quickly, just go to all you do is download it from here. There. Right. So once you have all the jars, that's effectively the hard part done and the manual part done. And I'm sure that there are probably some people screaming at their screen saying, "Why are you downloading jars manually? What, are you crazy? Why don't you use some kind of build tool like Maven or Ant?" And it's a valid argument. My response to that is, for these video series, I plan on focusing entirely on Cucumber and getting a Cucumber framework running, and I don't want to use build tools to try and drive the focus away from Cucumber. There's absolutely nothing stopping me from using a build tool. I can do it. In fact, using a build tool would actually speed up this process greatly. The only reason I'm not doing this is because I want to keep the focus on what this video series is about, and it's about Cucumber. I don't want to mess around with dependencies or with versioning, although in the long run that does make life easier. So the way I see it is, If you really want a build tool, then fine, I can do a video on it if you really want one. But otherwise, I'm just going to stick to what I do best, which is to try and keep the focus on what it should be on. Right, so now that we've kind of got the hairy topic out of the way, let's actually go and build a Java project and use these jars. Right, so the first thing I want to do is quite simply just create a brand new Java project. It's not difficult. So I'm gonna call this project Cucumber concept. I'll keep the version as 1.7 for Java. I'll click next, and under the libraries tab I'm just gonna bring in all the jars that I just downloaded, which are here. Finish. I'm just gonna check that I've got all my jars, and I do. Fantastic. Now let's talk about the hierarchy. So for any given type of framework, at this point in time I'm talking about frameworks in general, so not automation framework or web app frameworks, just frameworks in general. We tend to have hierarchies. What that means is we store certain files in certain locations for two core reasons. The first, because that's logically it just makes sense to have those files in those locations, and second, it helps us to be able to almost visually see where things are properly. It's also to help with various things such as resource management and maintainability over time. So the approach that I take is I usually have what I call a Cucumber runner class in a Cucumber package, and then I have another child package from the Cucumber package called something like features, for instance. And in the features package I then have my feature files and any step definitions. So that's the concept I go with. There's absolutely nothing stopping you from using a different directory. If you feel you want to do it in a different way, by all means go ahead and do it. But this is what I'll be using. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a quick package, and I'm going to call this package Cucumber. And in this package I'm going to create a new class, and I'm going to call this class the Cucumber runner, and finish that off. Right, so let me explain what the concept of this runner class is. So we don't have any feature files at the moment, but when we do and we run a feature file, what will happen is that feature file will try and look for some kind of class to tell it exactly what is supposed to happen. So what our runner class effectively does is it helps our feature files almost acknowledge that it is a feature file that needs to run, and it needs to run as part of a JUnit test. In the bigger scheme of things, it helps it to understand that there are somewhere in the framework code that matches up to steps, and it is how effectively both things communicate. So if you like, you can almost consider the feature file being on one side of the river and your step definition files being on the other side of the river, and a Cucumber run is almost a bridge between the two. It helps both effectively talk to each other, work alongside each other, and that's what our Cucumber runner class does. It's almost used just to marry up feature files and step files. So what we need to do is we first need to kind of give this runner class that that ability, and the way we do it is we first give it an annotation with run with, and we pass in the Cucumber class. So what this does is this just basically says whenever we try and run any Cucumber stuff, run the Cucumber class. Effectively run this as part of the Cucumber class. Right, next we will give our Cucumber runner class Cucumber options. So let me explain what Cucumber options are. Cucumber options are exactly what it sounds like. They're additional options we pass to Cucumber whenever we run a test. So in this instance, what we will do is we will pass in two options. The first is the format option, and the second is the features option. So what's the format option? The format option is used for reporting purposes. So whenever you run your test and you then want to see a report of it, let's just say you've got things which have passed, things which have failed, or maybe things which have not run at all. What the format option does is it reports on it and provides us with some reporting mechanism. I'm not going to go into too much detail. I'm just going to populate it for the sake of populating it. So you might be a bit upset why I'm not explaining, but I just want to keep the focus of this video in purely just setting it up. But just to kind of ignite your thirst for it, all I'm saying is I want our reports to come out in this format called the pretty format, and I want the format to come out as a JSON in the target folder, and I'll leave it at that for the moment. So all this is saying is once all the tests have run, or actually more specifically once this class has run, I want you to generate a JSON report, put it in this directory, and I want the format of the report to be of this style. That's all it is. Now the features is a little bit more self-explanatory. All it is we're saying where our features files are. That's it. So I'm going to say our feature files are in the source / cucumber / So all I'm saying is our feature files are in this package somewhere. So I'm just going to import in the necessary classes. Right. For any of you that are wondering how do I do that, just press Ctrl+Shift+O, and that automatically imports in any missing classes. Right. So now we have our runner class up and running. What we will do now is write a feature file. Now the feature file I'm going to write is going to be in a different package, but inside the cucumber package. So I'm going to call it .feature. Let's call it features actually. Right. And in this class I am going to create a new file, and I am going to create a feature file. So what I will do is I will give it a name. So I'll just call it my feature. And this is the important part. Whenever you create a feature file, make sure that the extension of the feature file is feature. So this part of the feature file could be anything. You can name it whatever you wish. Really doesn't matter. For the purpose of this video, doesn't matter. But the extension of the feature file must be .feature. And finish that. And that creates a feature file. Now, before we go any forward, you might have noticed that I've got this this really kind of lime green icon for my feature file, and that's because I've downloaded an additional plugin that helps me do that. So if you want, you don't have to have this plugin, but having this plugin really helps you see things in a much more kind of nicer, more aesthetic purpose. So if you want this plugin, all you have to do is this. Just go to help, then go to install new software, and then in here where it says work with, in this field, just type in this URL here. And once you type this in, again this will be in the description. Once you've typed this in, just click on here and download this plugin. Once you've downloaded it, just go through the normal procedure of pressing next and the finish buttons. Once you've done that, you will have to restart your Eclipse. But once you've done that, then you'll have this really cool plugin up and running. Right, so now we're going to write our feature file. So taking a step back, I assume you know what the structure of a Java class is. Traditionally, or not traditionally, but what you have at the very top is usually a package, if it is in a package, and then you have statements like the import statements, and then you have a declaration of your class, if you like, with the name, so it would be class followed by whatever your class is, and then inside that you'd have, usually this is where things can change a bit, you can have, usually you have your member variables followed by constructor followed by methods and so on. So taking that concept, in a Java class, you always strictly must have a package if it belongs to a package, and then that is followed by imports if you have imports, and then that is then followed by your class. So a feature file has this similar kind of construct in that there are certain things that have to appear in order, and there are other things which you can almost mess about with. So in a feature file, it's always advised that you start off with this keyword, a feature. Now, this is where the beauty of the plugin comes in, the Cucumber plugin. It highlights certain keywords for you. Right. So going back, this feature file. The first thing you should have is feature, and all this is just a description of what your feature file contains. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but for the purpose of the video, I'm just going to give this description let's just say proof of concept that my framework works. That's it. Once you said what your feature is, then you have a scenario. Now the scenario is effectively the beginning of a test. It almost identifies a test in your feature file. So this scenario, I'm just going to call this my first test, if you like. In a feature file, you only have one feature. It's almost the high-level description of what this feature file is. In a feature file, you can have multiple scenarios. So if I want, I can do this. There's nothing stopping me from doing this, having multiple scenarios. Now, in a scenario, this is where the bulk of Cucumber's kind of BDD style of testing comes in. This is where you define your given, then, and when steps. So I'm just going to say given, and notice that given is highlighted because it is a keyword. So let's just say given, this is my first step. When, again, another keyword, this is my second step, and then, again, notice it is a keyword, this is my final step. So let me explain what's happening here. In a feature file, we've established there is usually only one feature which has a high-level description of what the feature file is, and a feature can have multiple scenarios, and in a scenario we usually have steps. So in this scenario we have a given which does something, a when, and a then which actually does something. Note that this given, when, then are purely for readability purposes. There's absolutely nothing stopping me from making this say something like a when and making this something like a given. There's absolutely nothing stopping me from doing this. It's just, if you were to read it in plain English, it makes absolutely no sense to have a when and then a given, if you like. So this is traditionally how it is, and when I said multiple scenarios, this is what I meant. You can effectively have this. So another way to think of it is my feature file has 3 tests because it has 3 scenarios, and each test has several steps. So I hope that's kind of clear. So let's just save it, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run it. So to run it, all you can do is right click and run. In fact, before we run, if you just click on this pretty format, it really nicely indents everything. So anyway, let's go back. If you right click and go run as, and you run feature, what will happen now is, I've got an exception. Let's see what's happened. Cucumber exception, Java lang from me. Invocation target exception. I know what it is. Sorry, I think I've made a mistake. If you right click and then go to the properties, so right click on the project, go to properties, and we actually need to remove this here, this Cucumber Spring jar. Sorry, this is me experimenting a bit. Sorry, probably spent some time looking this up. In fact, maybe the clever few of you have already caught this information. Okay, so let's remove this. I'm really sorry about that. Okay, so now if you right click and run feature, what should happen is you get this brilliant message. Ta-da! Right, so you now have this message which basically says this is the feature, this is actually what it says is these are the steps that I tried to run, but and this is a summary of everything. So he said I found one scenario, however the scenario was undefined, It said I then found 3 steps within that scenario, and again the 3 steps were undefined, and this is expected. What this basically means is when we ran our feature, it saw the steps, but it wasn't able to find the code for the given steps. And it won't. We didn't write any code, did we? We just wrote a feature file. But that was the main kind of goal of this video. The goal of this video was just to write a feature file ultimately after gathering all the jars and setting up our project, and that was it. So the fact that we now have this message which says that your methods were undefined is proof that our feature file actually worked. Had the methods been defined, or rather had the steps been defined, then our code would have worked without any issues. And this neatly brings us on to my next video, which will be about a much more detailed walkthrough on how these two actually talk to each other, but more importantly writing steps for these lines of code. So what that means is actually writing some Java code, Java code that would execute when this step is called when we run our feature. So what did we do? We downloaded a couple of jars. We also downloaded a jar that shouldn't have been a part of this jar, so I am really sorry for that. I apologize. But on the plus side, we saw an error that came up. So if you ever get that error going forward, you know why it could be. It could be possibly because you've got a jar where you shouldn't have. We also wrote our run class, and I explained what this does. This effectively helps our feature file go and look for a Java class which would contain the Java code for these steps. It also set up a JSON file as well as the location for where our feature files are, and we then wrote a feature file, effectively the main kind of backbone of the framework, which should have then picked up steps which we didn't define. And that's it. I hope you enjoy my videos, and I hope that they bring you some new knowledge or insight into writing cucumber tests. If they do, please subscribe and rate. If you have any questions or video suggestions, then please leave a comment below. If you want, you can just send me a message. I always answer using my best. Many thanks for watching. Until next time, ciao.